Welcome to Florist Review's online video that pairs with the technique department in each month's magazine. I'm Talmage McLaurin, publisher of Florist Review. This month's technique is about arranging a dozen roses, and it's familiar for most florists in most shops. Feel free to utilize this with your staff or criticize it if you want them to do it a different way. So here we go. The first thing I like to do with a dozen roses is pick a great vase. This is a sturdy vase from Garcia Glass. Rather than wasting the flower solution while I'm arranging the vase, I fill it with tap water now and with another flower solution later. But don't forget. The first thing I like to do to arrange a dozen roses is fill it with greens, and I am just placing these greens in all the way around, creating a radiation with the stems. And if you want to know if you're creating a great radiation at any point, you can just pick it up, and if all your stems are facing different directions, you know you're radiating the stems. If they're all facing one way, you're doing it the wrong way. Now I'm going to add a few stems of Pittosporum. Be very conscious of the number of greens that you're adding to an arrangement, because the greens are not free. They are costly, and they add to the value of an arrangement and also the cost of the arrangement. So make sure that you're not putting too many greens. I like to add enough greens to the arrangement that it creates an area that when I start putting in the rose stems, that it holds them into place. With the greens placed in the vase, the next thing I do is prepare the roses to go in the vase. So I'll set the greens aside and look at a dozen roses here. Check all the petals at the top, and if there's any damage, if there's any spots on it, I go ahead and remove a couple of petals. If you have to remove more than a couple of petals, you might want to talk to somebody, because you may have a problem with the rose. But by removing just a couple of petals, you should have a perfect blossom. To prepare the roses for this arrangement, I'm going to remove the foliage that would go underwater when I place the stem into the vase. The reason that I do this is because any of the foliage that's underwater will cause bacteria to grow, and you don't want that to happen. You want these roses to last as long as possible. I'm also going to remove the tips of some of the thorns on the lower part of the stem. This way it makes a smooth stem to go down into the greenery, and so it doesn't get caught up in the greenery and move everything around. It makes it just a little bit easier to arrange. Now that all the roses are laid out and the stems are cleaned and the petals that had damage to it are removed, I'm going to look at the length of the stems. And what I like to do is I like to keep most of the stems that go into an arrangement about the same length. Now this may be unusual to some people, but for me it works out really perfectly. So if I have a few stems that are too long, I'm just going to clip them off so that all of the stems are roughly uniform. Here again we're working with the idea that all of the stems that go into this vase should radiate. If you're having a little trouble with that concept, radiation means that all the stems will intersect at one point. And when they intersect at one point, going all different directions all the way around, it will resemble, well, for example, a fern plant. You know how the fronds of a fern go all different directions, but they all seem to come back to one growth point? That's the way you want the roses to be arranged in this vase. And although I'm cutting the stems at the same level, I'm creating the slightest bit of an arc. Some of the stems in the middle are a little taller, the ones around the edge a little bit shorter. And I'm spacing them as evenly as I can. Sometimes when you're arranging, it helps just to spin the vase around a bit so that you can make sure that everything's even on all sides. Next, I want to add some filler flower. The traditional filler flower for roses, obviously, is baby's breath, but there are all kinds of choices. Wax flowers and the limoniums provide great options for differentiating the arrangements and making them, a little bit more unusual. But if you're like most customers, baby's breath for Valentine's Day is their tradition. So a lot of people are going to ask for it or expect it. So I am arranging the baby's breath just at the top of where the foliage ends. That way you can see all of the baby's breath. It doesn't get caught up in the foliage, and you can maximize the amount of flowers that are added when you add the filler flower to the design. Just like you don't want the baby's breath to go too far into the arrangement so that the foliage obscures the baby's breath, you also don't want the baby's breath to be too high. You don't want the roses to be clouded by the baby's breath addition. So it's somewhere in between the top of the foliages and the lower part of the roses. This is the point where I like to change the water. With all the arranging of roses and filler flowers and foliages, bits of debris can get into the water and make it pretty cloudy. Also, if you'll remember, we didn't put a flower food treated water into the vase when we started. It was just regular tap water. So what we want to do to make this switch over of the water easy is I just take it in my hands right at the lip of the vase, and I can hold the whole arrangement in one hand. If you've got big hands, this is easy to do, and you can go ahead and change the water with the other hand. If your hands aren't so big, it may be a two-person job, so grab somebody at the design table and let them help you out. And then just slip the flowers, the whole arrangement, right back down into the vase without disturbing a thing. The last step in arranging a dozen roses for me is to add the add-on sale. If you were a good salesman or your people up front were good at selling this dozen of roses, they will have added a stuffed toy or balloons or maybe even a box of chocolate. And I like to put that right where the traditional bow would have been. In place of the bow, we've got a box of chocolates here from the sweet shop, and I put that on a stem, and I'm just going to set that down in the front. Since this video was for the beginning designer, maybe you want to learn how to do a few other simple projects that you find every day in a flower shop. Our book, Flower Arranging, Step-by-Step Instructions for Everyday Design, leads you through all different kinds of projects that you will do every day in a retail flower shop. You can pick that up right here online. If you'll click onto the bookstore, we'll have you set up in no time. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.